board now reconvenes this meeting of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees in open session at 7 p.m. on April 10, 2018 at the Plano ISD Administrative Building. I am David Stolley, Vice President of the Plano ISD Board of Trustees. President Missy Bender is ill, so I will be the presiding officer for tonight's meeting. On the board's behalf, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all who are present and to our web and video viewers. We will conduct our meeting focusing on the district's two major goals: ensure continued improvement in student learning and ensure efficient use of resources. Let me introduce my fellow trustees and staff. Seated to my left are Sarah Bonser, Superintendent of Schools, Nancy Humphrey, Board Secretary, Trustee Tammy Richards, and Trustee Jerry Chambers. Seated to my right are Trustee Dr. Yoram Solomon, Trustee Angela Powell, and the Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Board of Trustees, Denise Gillespie. Trustee Yoram Solomon will offer tonight's inspirational message. Dr. Solomon.
Thank you. You know, as we're watching the news, we see the teachers in Oklahoma walking out on their classrooms, you know, it scares me that this doesn't happen here. The teachers in Oklahoma are getting $7,000 on average less than our teachers here. And every district here and every district in the US puts the students above everything. And it reminded me of an article that I read once. You all probably saw how a passenger was taken off a United Airlines flight, bleeding and all. And when that happened, United Airlines changed policies so that doesn't happen again. And one day I remember reading that Southwest Airlines removed the passenger from a plane. And the first thing that came to mind was, really? Southwest Airlines? We know them as such a nice airline with such great service. And I read the story, and the story was different than what I thought. It was a plane that just left the gate, and the pilot, at his discretion, turned a $60 million plane that cost $6,000 an hour to operate, brought it back to the gate. They asked one passenger to follow them to the gate. She followed them to the gate, and at the gate they told her to call her husband. As it turns out, her husband was trying to call her, her phone was off because the plane was about to depart. And she called him, and he told her to that their son, 24 years old, just had a head injury in Denver. The pilot decided on his own to turn the plane around, get her off the plane. They booked her on the next direct flights to Denver. They arranged for hotel, they arranged for transportation immediately to the hospital, free of charge. So Southwest Airlines removed the passenger from the plane. And it made me wonder, and I started looking at the mission statements for the different airlines. The three major airlines have mission statements that all focus on how they treat the passengers. That the passengers are the most important people, and that's how they needed to be treated. Just like we think about the students. The students are the most important people to us, right? Southwest Airlines is the only airline that does not have the passengers in their mission statement. Their mission statement by the CEO says, our people are our single greatest strength and most enduring long-term competitive advantage. So we're about to embark on a strategic plan, and I think we need to keep in mind that our teachers are our strength. And if we treat our teachers well, we don't have to worry about the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoram. The board welcomes our student greeters for this evening. Tonight, we have with us the Plano Senior High girls basketball team, who are recently won the UIL 6A Girls Basketball State Championship. Ladies. The ladies are going to come forward and lead us in the pledge tonight. Will everyone please stand for the pledge?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one
hold that bad boy up so everybody can see it. Well, the board is delighted to be able to honor your hard-won battle tonight. And if you would, please introduce yourselves. Tell us how long you've been playing basketball and your position.
My name is Paola Leeds. I've been playing basketball since 3rd grade and shooting guard.
Hi, my name's Emma. I've been playing basketball since 1st grade and I'm a center.
Hi, I'm Katie Farrell. I've been playing basketball since kindergarten and I'm a point guard.
I'm Sarah Bowles. I've been playing since 2nd grade and I'm a shooting guard.
I'm Avery and I've been playing since the 2nd grade and I'm a forward.
I'm Lolo Davenport. I've been playing since kindergarten. I'm a senior and I'm a shooting guard.
Hi, I'm Anna Voigt and I've been playing since 2nd grade and I'm a forward.
I'm Veronica Stark. I've been playing since 2nd grade and I'm a shooting guard.
Hi, I'm Sophie Fuentes. I've been playing since kindergarten and I'm a senior and I'm a shooting guard.
Hi, I'm Zaria Collins. I've been playing since 2nd grade and I'm a power forward.
Hi, I'm Nirvani. I've been playing since kindergarten. I'm a junior. Oh, and I'm a shooting guard.
Hi, I'm Michaela Eddins. I'm a freshman and
That never happened.
I've been playing since 1st grade and I'm a point guard. Hi, I'm Jordan Merritt. I'm a sophomore. I've been playing since 5th grade and I'm a forward.
I think some of the board.
Oh, we have Maggie Robbins. She's a sophomore. And then Bianca and
Well, we're awfully proud of y'all, and I think the board and superintendent may have a few additional comments. Anybody?
You'll go first.
I'll go for it. Girls, y'all are so lucky. I can personally say that I don't know your JV coach well, but I know Coach Belcher and Coach Stallings, and y'all have been very blessed to have some great leadership and clearly you've learned great from their model and their inspiration. So thank you all very much for representing us so well.
I also want to thank your parents who started driving you when you were in kindergarten
Yes,
to get to all those
amen.
practices. So thank you, parents, for this investment in your children. We appreciate it.
One of the strongest skills that you can have in life is persistence. And when I'm hearing kindergarten and 3rd grade and 2nd grade, that's persistent. So we're proud of you for that.
And I believe that your coaches did a great job with you girls, and you girls practiced very hard, and you deserved it.
And
So,
I always get to be the closer on this one.
well, hold on. I want to say something.
All right.
So my Lady Wildcat blood runs pretty deep. My sister played basketball at Plano Senior when I was in 4th grade, and I ran around the gym watching her play. And so I know the way that she practiced, and I know how hard she played, and she never reached the level of success that you all have. And so it's amazing anytime that we have champions at this level. What a great effort and a great team you all are, and we're awfully proud of you.
So they say that victory belongs to the most persevering. And so I would say that your hard work and perseverance has paid off. And I hope you get to enjoy every moment of this sweet victory and take it with you into the future. And remember how this feels. Remember how this feels, because you'll have an opportunity to feel this way again. And you'll know what you're fighting for. So congratulations, parents. Thank you for driving them, for staying with them when they were tired and crying and had homework on top of practice on top of homework. And we appreciate all that you've done to represent Plano ISD, and enjoy your moment. Thank you so much.
could also get coaches, y'all stand up. Now, finally, if there are family members here tonight who support these athletes, we also want to recognize you for your support because of the things we've just heard. You all would please stand. Now, ladies, Board Secretary Nancy Humphrey over here has a team certificate to present, and after you receive this certificate, then you all may be reseated. Parents, don't be shy. Come up and get a picture. We are now going to move to the recognition part of the agenda. Carla Oliver, Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, is made aware of student guests prior to the meeting. Ms. Oliver?
Thank you. We do have a couple of guests this evening that come to us from the Boy Scout Troop 25. If you would please stand for recognition. I know you're out there. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carla. Here in PISD, we're fortunate to have more student achievements at the state level to recognize. The Texas Science and Engineering Fair Best of Show and Grand Prize winners are here this evening. Would these students please come to the front of the room for recognition? Yeah, y'all come into. Dr. Katrina Hasley, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, will introduce this recognition.
All right, thank you. I'll invite Karen Shepard, our Secondary Science Coordinator, to the podium, and she will tell you a little about the competition and introduce these fine students.
Good evening. I just want to tell you a little bit about the science fair process this year. 4,700 kids started science fair in the secondary level this year in Plano ISD, representing 3,754 projects. That's a lot of students. And in order to get to the next level, they had to compete at their school fair. 160 middle school students made it out of their school fair and 196 high school projects to come to our district science fair. And that same group also had already qualified for the regional science fair held on February 9th. At the regional science, on February 24th. At the regional science fair, in order to qualify for state, they had to place first through third in their division. So that's 54 projects total in the senior and the junior division. We had 35 junior level students representing 31 projects compete at the State Science and Engineering Fair, and 62 senior level students representing 47 projects, that's 88% of the projects that went from our region, at the state fair as well. And they did very well. Our junior division kids, 6 won first place, 3 won second place, and 3 won third place. And in our senior division, 6 won first place, 6 won second place, and 4 won third place. And then we had just a couple of grand prize winners. So I'd like to introduce those to you now. Navya Ramakrishnan. She has a few words to say. She wants to tell you about her project. Brittany's going to bring it to you, Ms. Navya.
Good evening, everyone.
My name is Navya Ramakrishnan, and I'm from Rice Middle School. And first, I would like to thank Ms. Botine for supporting me so much throughout the science fair journey. And my project is about that there's glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy. They lead to irreversible vision loss. And the problem with these eye diseases is that it takes 6 months to a year for a doctor to figure out whether the patient actually has the eye disease or not. So one, the doctor has to go through this exhaustive manual evaluation, and two, the patients could lose a severe amount of vision during this time. And so in my project, I created a web application that would help detect these eye diseases at its early stages. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was doing in 8th grade. Navia's going to go to Jasper next year. And next we have Tanaz Mohammed from Otto Middle School, and she was our first place in her category, first grand prize in life science, and best of show at the state fair.
Hi everyone, my name is Deniz and I go to Otto Middle School, and I'd like to start off by thanking Ms. Cowley and Ms. Bradshaw for supporting me on my science fair journey. Now my science fair project was called Explore or Exploit, and I created a computer program which allowed me to analyze the exploratory decision-making tendencies of people in correlation to whether or not they were exposed to competitive motivation. So thank you.
And last we have Berzan Basara and Malavsh. I know how to say y'all's name. They said their names so bad at the state fair we didn't even recognize them. So these guys are seniors at Plano Senior High School. They won second grand prize and won their third trip to International Science Fair. So they've been to International Science Fair 3 out of 4 years. That's a pretty remarkable feat.
Thank you. Before we get into what our project was about, because we're seniors, we'd like to thank both Ms. Shepard and Ms. Carson, who are our science fair sponsor from Plano Senior High. But we'd also like to thank Ms. Shepard, as well as Ms. Baker, Mr. Milburn, and a countless number of other teachers across the district who have been with us through this journey for all 13 years and have countlessly put in hours of their own time to supporting us to allow us to go to these science fairs and participate all across the country. That being said, Mal will give you a rundown.
First of all, Mr. Stolly, I like your tie.
Thank you. Good taste.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the World Health Organization reports that every year there are over 500,000 spinal cord injuries from military or civilian worlds. This leaves a lot of people with immobility and reliance on human caretakers. And what we realize is that in the most severe paralysis cases, the muscle group that remains intact is your eyes because it's directly connected to your brain.
So keeping in mind in cases like quadriplegia, where someone can't control even their arms or legs, we decided to look towards the eyes as a means of controlling a wheelchair. And so what we did in the end was we used a system called electrooculography, which takes small electrical signals from around your eye and use them as inputs to motor control in a wheelchair. And so effectively, we created a wheelchair that an individual can control with their eyes.
Where are they going next? I don't know that they've made their decision.
So I'm between Urbana-Champaign or University of Texas Austin for computer engineering.
And I'm between the U.S. Naval Academy and UT Austin for mechanical engineering.
All right, students, so Board Vice President Nancy Humphrey, I'm sorry, Board Secretary, I'm the Vice President. Nancy Humphrey has certificates to present to each of you, and after you've received your certificate, you'll be free to leave. Of course it don't.
Congratulations on behalf of the board, and an amazing work you guys did. All of you. Congratulations to you on behalf of the board. Gentlemen, you are welcome. Nice to meet you, and good luck in the future. Congratulations on behalf of the board. Thank you. You might put a picture with your certificate.
Yeah, parents, come up again. Come get pictures. Don't be shy. Thank you all. Thank you.
work. But to have a question in science and then do the research to find answers to questions that make a difference is pretty impressive. And so to each of you in your endeavors, congratulations. What an outstanding accomplishment. And you know, just like the basketball team, thanks so much for representing Plano ISD in the very best ways possible. There you go. Congratulations.
There is a TED video if you want to watch. It's created by Simon Sinek. I don't remember exactly the title, but it's based on his book Start With Why. And the general session there, or notion there, is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And just listening to you and the passion that I could feel from all four of you about the specific project that you worked on, I think you got your why nailed down. Congratulations.
So we'll continue now along with the recognition portion of our agenda. And in addition to all of the students we've recognized so far this evening, the board is proud to recognize many more students who have recently achieved at the state level. If you'll see the scrolling PowerPoint of student names coming up, we're also honoring Code Wars winners from Plano West, and these students placed in the state computer science competition. In the career and technical education area, BPA had 14 students advance to the national competition, and DECA had 11 students advance to the national competition. And in UIL film, which I didn't even know we had a UIL film competition, a Plano West student won 5th place in Division II narrative. And finally, in fine arts, a 4th grade student from Hahn had his Youth Art Month artwork selected for the Governor's Gallery. Please join me in giving these students and these accomplishments a round of applause. We also have several staff recognitions this evening. Board Secretary Nancy Humphrey will be presenting the certificates. Dr. Carrie Cooper, Assistant Superintendent for Campus Services, will introduce our first staff recognition. Plano Senior High head girls basketball coach Rodney Belcher has recently been named Coach of the Year. Go ahead.
As Coach Belcher makes his way over toward Miss Humphrey, a couple of quick comments as the Lady Wildcats finished up their season. I want to share a couple other items about the team. Miss Bonzer, I was gonna be the closer, but I felt I better not jump in there. The win-loss record for the Lady Wildcats this year was 35-6. They were the district champions. They had several individuals who also excelled, and I know it's a team sport, but they did rise and were recognized as Jordan was Player of the Year, and Lolo was the MVP down at the state tournament. We also had two other, Jordan and Zaria, on the all-state tournament team. Katie, Lolo, and Jordan were all region. Katie, Jordan, and Zaria were first team all-district, and this is even more impressive, especially to people like me. We had 5 that were academic all-district: Zaria, Payal, Emma, Jordan, and Veronica. So we want to thank them for those efforts. And Coach Belcher leading the Lady Wildcats this year, but at the end of the season, as many organizations take some tabulations and have some conversations, was recently named the Dallas Morning News Coach of the Year and also the Coach of the Year by the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches. So congratulations, Coach Belcher. And one last item, if I'm getting this correct, I was recently informed, matter of fact this afternoon, that Thursday afternoon the members and representatives from the National Guard and the Max Prep organization is going to be at Plano Senior High to honor them as one of the top 10 programs, basketball programs in the nation. So congratulations.
Coach Belcher, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for your dedication to the girls of the Plano Senior High basketball team and to being a role model for coaches, not only in our city and our district, but across the nation, for all the hard work and dedication you've put into supporting the girls. We thank you for everything that you do. Thanks so much.
Coach, if you've got family or staff here supporting with you, if y'all would stand, because y'all are all part of this as well. Thank y'all. Our next staff recognition will be introduced by Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, Dr. Katrina Hasley, and Board Secretary Nancy Humphrey will present one final certificate.
Thank you, Vice President Stolley. I am very excited this evening to be able to recognize Amy Bates, who is our Director of Special Projects. She was recently recognized as the North Texas First Robotics Outstanding Volunteer of the Year. First, standing for inspiration and recognition in science and technology. The award was presented to her at the Dallas Regional Competition for Robotics, which was attended by more than 2,000 enthusiasts from Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and a team from Brazil. The First Robotics is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to inspire young people to be science and technology leaders and innovators. The organization creates yearly robotics challenges for over 500,000 students in 88 countries. When our North Texas Regional Director of First presented Ms. Bates with the award, he said, "This is in recognition for spending countless evenings and weekends mentoring students, recruiting volunteers, and organizing events, including 2 First LEGO League qualifying tournaments, 1 First Tech Challenge qualifying tournament, and a new First Robotics Competition off-season event. These events have provided opportunities for hundreds of students in the North Texas area to participate in and grow in their knowledge of STEM." Ms. Bates lives and breathes robotics, and we're very excited that she received this award to commend her on her extra efforts above and beyond what would be expected.
Would any family member, staff, or students who may be here to honor Ms. Bates please stand and help us applaud her countless hours of mentoring. Okay, students, that's it. If y'all want to leave, you're free to go. Thank you. Congratulations to all of them. The board will now move to the regular public comment portion of our agenda. For the public comment portion of our agenda, the board has public comment cards that are accepted from 6 to 7 p.m. Cards are not accepted after 7 p.m. and are not transferable to other parties or speakers. All cards were collected and given to Carla Oliver, or a representative of the Communications Department, who will present the speakers during this time. Ms. Oliver, do we have any speakers for public comment?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 4 speakers that come under the heading of non-agenda.
Okay, so as non-agenda items, bear with me while I read the legalese. Pursuant to board policies BED legal, BED local, and BED exhibit, the board may place reasonable restraints on the number, length, and frequency of presentations so long as it does not unfairly discriminate among speakers based on their viewpoint. The board is not authorized to discuss or act on the public's comments or complaints if the subject is not on the agenda. If a member of the public or the board inquires about a subject for which notice has been given, has not been given, the board may only make a statement of specific factual information, recite existing policy in response to the inquiry, or refer the person to a staff person for more information or assistance. If the subject of the public comment is already on the agenda for the meeting, the board may invite the speaker to stay until the board reaches that topic on the agenda. 30 minutes have been allotted to hear persons who desire to make comments to the board. Persons who wish to participate in this portion of the meeting shall complete the appropriate public comment form before the meeting begins and indicate the topic about which they wish to speak. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. If you are not finished speaking at the end of your 3 minutes, I will interrupt you so we can move on to the next person. Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. Finally, pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074 and 551.80821, the board will not permit the presentation of personally identifiable information regarding a student and will not discuss the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. Should a speaker wish to address one of these issues, they must do so through the appropriate local grievance policies, FNG local, DGBA local, or GF local. These speakers will be addressed in the non-agenda item section of our meeting, which is item 12. Correct? Okay. We will now address the consent agenda, which includes personnel recommendations, minutes of previous meetings, bids, purchases, and construction items. Are there any requests to remove an item or items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved. I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. With the approval of the consent agenda, I would like to invite Assistant Superintendent for Employee Services, Dr. Beth Brockman, to introduce the administrative appointments portion of our agenda, with an appointment in District Health. Susan Modisette, Assistant Superintendent for Campus Service, will be introducing 2 more appointments. After these administrative appointment introductions have been completed, the administrative appointments and their families will gather in the lobby for photos. Dr. Brockman.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to announce our new Director of District Health Services, Ms. Stacy Antello. And I would like to also at the same time recognize Megan Schuler. She was our Director for District Health Services, but we transferred her over to be the Director of Benefits and Risk Management, and I wanted to acknowledge her and her family this evening as well. We are thrilled.
Good evening. I am equally thrilled to announce 2 new members to the campus services team, both just all-stars. I am going to work on having them do a little bit more significant contributions because it feels a little anticlimactic after listening to our students this evening. I really am thrilled to introduce Jill Stoker, who will be our new Executive Director of Elementary Campus Services. Jill has been a bilingual and special education teacher and has served our district in the roles of both being a principal at Davis Elementary and Matthews Elementary. Jill is joined by her husband John and son Blake this evening. In rounding out our team, we're excited to welcome Bill McLaughlin. Bill has served as a teacher and coach in our district, has been a middle school principal at Renner, a high school principal at Shepton, and is currently in the role of HR director. And Bill is joined this evening by his wife Sherry, who is also a proud Plano West teacher, his daughter Marissa, and his daughter Kylie, who's a Baylor Bear and made the trip in tonight to congratulate her dad.
Yes, welcome to the team. We're so glad and we can't wait to have you come on board. So when the school year ends, we'll be ready for you. So you just need to let us know how we can help support you in your new roles and responsibilities. But welcome to the team. So glad to have you.
We're now moving to items for discussion and action, section 9. The time is 7:37. The board heard a level 4 appeal filed by Chelsea Keever in closed session. The board then adjourned into closed session pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. Following closed session, the board has now reconvened in open session. In accordance with chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, any action regarding this matter must be taken in open session. Do I have a motion on the level 4 appeal?
I move that the board deny the level 4 appeal, therefore upholding the administration's previous decision in level 3 regarding the level 4 appeal.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Dr. Katrina Hasley will introduce the discussion of the procedure to resolve any disputes between the Plano ISD Board of Trustees and the Plano ISD Head Start Policy Council as required by 1301.6 of the Head Start Performance Standards. Dr. Hasley.
Yes, thank you. As you have stated, the Head Start program performance standards require that every Head Start program create a set of procedures to facilitate a resolution if there ever were to be a dispute between the governing body, which is the Board of Trustees, and the Head Start Policy Council. Tina Hardison, our Head Start principal, and Susanna Spina, our Director of Early Childhood, worked on these procedures for our district. So the administration recommends approval of the impasse procedure as submitted.
Do I have a motion to accept the impasse procedure as presented?
I move we accept these impasse procedures as presented.
And I second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move to item 9C, the Board of Trustees Operating Protocol Updates. Is there any discussion regarding the proposed Board of Trustees operating protocol updates, all of which we've all received prior to the meeting?
Yes, I'd like to bring up an issue in the area of communications. I brought this before. I don't see in the current language that it precludes this. I just want to clarify something and make sure that we're all on the same page. Sometimes the media approaches us to get not necessarily a board position, the position of the entire board, but really our position on things, especially in issues where we don't necessarily are all in agreement. I do not see any specific language that prohibits us from doing so. I know that the language says that we are, where was it, that we're, that we should be approaching or referring those communications to Carla, but when the media wants to get the position of an individual board member, there is no, sometimes there is no time, but sometimes there is no, it doesn't make sense because we can forward to you, but nobody else will be able to give our individual positions on that. So I don't see anything in the language that prevents this. It cannot prohibit this, obviously, because of the First Amendment right, but I don't see anything that suggests don't do that. Is that everybody else's opinion too?
What page is that on?
I'm sorry?
What page?
This is page 10. It starts at page 10.
Oh.
Well, I believe if it's a matter that the board is in deliberations on in between meetings, I think it's inappropriate for a single board member to be giving an interview with the media, because we sit as members of a corporate body, and I believe that that would pretty much violate the process until the board has taken action on that item. I think that media interviews is supposed to be the voice of the board through the president of the board.
But that wouldn't always be the case. There are times where when we are going to be asked and have been asked for our personal position on things, sometimes things that are not in front of the board but do relate to education in general. Sometimes it's things that after the board has made a decision, once take me for example, if I have a different position on a certain issue and the interview is about why do you have an opposing opinion on why did you vote against something, obviously they're not asking me for the board's position. And again, I'm bringing this up. I don't see any language that prevents that from happening. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page.
My reading is the same as yours, although certainly the statement says that someone is requested to direct,
right,
not directed, mandated. But I think also we should take into consideration the items listed in number 9 about clarifying that you are speaking as an individual,
yes,
not for the board. And then the last one that was added, refrain from using district resources. So to do a press conference here in this room, for example, would probably be inappropriate because it might convey the idea that the district was supportive of whatever that position was. So I think as long as we live in concert with these instructions, I think we can all both maintain our corporate body and our individual rights.
Yeah, I think item number 8 actually speaks to that the idea that while the board member retains the right to speak individually, and certainly the board can't deny the right to speech, you must understand, the individual board members have to understand that comments will likely be interpreted that as the viewpoint of the board, the body corporate. I think, Tammy, to your point, if you're providing a backdrop, district backdrop, doing an interview in front of the administration building or even inside here, that's probably sending the wrong message to what I think you're trying to clarify, which is when you're asked specifically about your viewpoint,
right?
You know, certainly you are, you know, you have the right to speak. But again, I think too, I would point back to item number 4, which is a broad statement that if anybody who receives a media request for information, comments, or an interview is requested to consult with the superintendent, the board president, and frankly, assistant superintendent for government, community, and planning initiatives, so Carla as well. So, you know, keeping the person who's directly responsible for media matters informed is certainly a very, I think that's a courtesy that we should extend.
Absolutely. And I think we reiterate that in 9 bullet point 4, notify the district's assistant superintendent for government, community, and planning initiatives about the meeting request. So I guess we must feel that's pretty important if we pretty much have it in there twice.
Yeah, I think ultimately I would say, Yorm, that you know, I think your read is accurate, but I do think there's a fine line that is very easy to cross, whereby individual actions may be interpreted to be the statement of the body corporate, which is, I think, at the heart of what this policy, this procedure is trying to cover, which is, you know, we want to be very clear that the body corporate speaks as one, with one voice, although it is made up of 7 individuals.
Yeah, no, and I have no issues with those. The one, I think there needs to be a slight correction. I saw that just now in item 2 there, page 14. I'm sorry, I'm on to page 14, the board member communication with the media, where it says the first line, number 2, it actually says subsection A above, and in the 4th line it says subsection A. I believe it should be subsection 1. in both cases. I just saw that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Other than that, I don't have any other issue.
Would a nit of correcting a nit require a motion to approve, to change, to amend?
We haven't made the original motion yet, so I'll make a motion to adopt the changes to the board operating protocol with a small change of changing A to 1 in subsection 2 on page 14.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion, conversation? Okay, let's vote. All in favor? Any opposed? No. The motion passes unanimously. Section 10.
10.
Okay, we're now on section 10, reports. In section 10A, blended learning reports, Dr. Katrina Hasley will introduce the report on blended learning. Dr. Hasley?
Yes, thank you. We do have some very exciting work going on in the area of blended learning. Our secondary academics executive director, Dr. Lisa Thibodeau, has been working closely with Matt Sipes, who is our director for expanded learning from the Student Services Department. And so I've asked them to prepare a report to update the board on progress in continuing to make advancements in this area of blended learning to have more opportunities for our students. So this is an update on that work.
Thank you, Dr. Hasley. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Bonzer. I'm really excited right now because I thought we were going after Dash tonight, so this changes everything, right? As with love, Dash. Our purpose this evening is to share with you just some exciting things, some innovative work we think we're doing in the district around a contemporary blended learning construct. So a new way that we're seeing student access to experiences around content. Matt and I laugh about this and say this is not your parents or your grandparents' version of blended learning from higher ed, but a new version that we've been exploring and that Matt has really taken the lead on sharing with our secondary academics department and teaching us about this. So we have had a version of blended learning in the district for about 15 years, but this is new and exciting. It's new ways to bring online into the mainstream. It's about possibilities and capacity, and we certainly want to give a shout out to Matt Fry in the Instructional Technology Department for helping grow that capacity around the Chromebook rollout for sure. And then work that's also been going on through other departments with flexible learning spaces in our schools. That gives us additional capacity to explore blended learning in all grade levels. So Matt is actually going to take us through the history of our current programs and our current offerings, and then we'll share with you some of the plan directions we have for the near and distant future also.
Thank you, Dr. Thibodeau. Good evening. First, I'd like to talk about what is blended learning. And blended learning is a formal education plan or program where the student at least learns in part through online learning and has some element of control over pace, place, time, or path. And so it really does control, or does combine the best of online learning and the best of what a student receives in a traditional face-to-face brick and mortar setting. When we talk about why blended learning, there's two real big pieces. The first is student equity. When you look at the blended learning models, which we'll do on the next slide, it really does allow a student to receive targeted, individualized instruction. And also it allows a student to build agency, which is basically just the opposite of helplessness. And our district's innovation plan lists blended learning and in a way that students have choice and voice over their learning experiences. So those are the two big reasons, equity and agency. Here are the four main blended learning models, a rotation model, and there are variances to that, but basically students rotate through fixed stations, one of them being online learning, and they may or may not have an individual playlist. It could be a class playlist where they're all working through each station. an a la carte model, which we have in Plano, and I'll describe a little bit more, but it's where students supplement their traditional experiences with online courses. A flex model is where students go through an individual playlist, and each student's experience looks different, but there is the combination of online and face-to-face. An enriched virtual model, students, this is similar to the flex model, but students have designated face-to-face sessions that all students must attend. And for the most part, the curriculum is the same. It's not differentiated. There are not individual playlists like there are in a flex model. So what does online and blended currently look like in Plano ISD? We are most well known for our, what we call eSchool, and eSchool's been around since 2001. This would be our a la carte model where students are able to supplement what they do in a face-to-face setting. It is an asynchronous learning experience in which the students are going through on their own. There is a teacher, obviously, of record, and that teacher is facilitating the learning experiences. We have a really good success rate. 97% of the students that complete do finish. We have 41 semester course offerings. 27 of those, it's not listed on the PowerPoint, but 27 of those are approved through the Texas Virtual School Network, and there's a rigorous process to which those courses must get approved. And we have 104 teachers that work with our students supplementally to what they do during the day. We have a campus-based online instruction where these online courses are actually built in the student's school day. It began in 2004, and students use these courses if they come in and they're deficient, or if they need to recover credits or even accelerate. And students can earn up to a full credit in a semester and possibly 2 full credits in a school year. So it's a great opportunity for students to catch up or accelerate as needed. Night school is also a blended form of blended learning. Students meet every Tuesday and Thursday night at Plano Senior High from 5:30 to 8:30. In my personal opinion, this is probably one of our better models. The teacher-student relationship is really honored and celebrated in a way that really focuses on the learner. Students can can earn up to a full credit in a semester, and we began using our eSchool courses probably around 2009, and we have a great success rate with our online courses and these type of dependent learners. And our most recent blended model, which is considered an enriched virtual model, started in 2015, 2016, and we started with senior high economics and government. And in this model, students are required to show up the first day of class, and then if they are on pace according to the semester pacing guide, they can forego physical attendance the rest of the week. So Tuesday through Friday, they can focus on other coursework. They can still do coursework for economics or government. They can still show up in class, but they're not required to. This has been a great option for students in extracurriculars or who have a job and need to focus on some things outside of school. Since 2015, 2016, we've had 171 students. This was through last semester, so through fall of 2017, 171 total students. As you can see, we are 99% successful, and 97%, I'm sorry, completion, and 99% successful. So it's been a great model. And I'd like to show a video where 3 students describe their experience and a teacher also describes his experience with this model.
I play football actually, so that takes up a lot of time. I usually come to class every day, but I don't have to, so it works well with my schedule. So I think it's a lot more responsibility because basically our teacher gives us the due dates and we have to have our stuff done by that due date. I feel like it does prepare us for a college setting. In colleges, the professors, they lecture over the stuff and then they let us do the studying and we have to do everything on our own time and all the homework. And I think this class really prepares us for what we'll have to do in college.
I actually found out through a friend who told me about it because I heard that it was project-based and not test-based. I like being online because I can work at my own pace and do it whenever I need to, but I like having a teacher who helps us when we need him.
You're letting the students take learning into their own hands and then helping them as they need. The course itself is flexible and that you only have to come once a week once you get started, and then the other days are optional so long as you're logging in somewhere and doing your work. So if you work and you need to leave a couple days a week during this class time, gives you that ability to do that while still doing coursework.
This one was 5th period, and I'm taking 0 hour 2, so this is my last period of the day. It's all self-paced. You got something else to do, you can leave early, and then you can go do it at home.
I apologize for the abrupt end. That video was clipped from a longer video, and so, but I should have just let Coach Chilavetis and the students go first. They do a great job of explaining the benefits of our blended learning model for economics and government. So as a part of our investigation, we've looked at what other districts are doing with online and blended, and I want to talk about two of these schools. Both are in Louisville ISD. We've made several trips, different folks from secondary academics and expanded learning. Creek Valley Middle School uses really an on-campus blend for 8th grade U.S. history, and they combine blended learning with flex learning spaces throughout the campus. Students really have a lot of choice and voice and agency to work really wherever they want at designated learning spaces throughout the campus. The campus uses trust cards as a form of student management, and there's a lot of pride and ownership and culture built around those trust cards and the trust that teachers have with students. Of course, the learning environments lend themselves to students to be able to work throughout the campus however they see fit. And so there's a lot of agency in the students' learning. The other campus was Flower Mound Marcus, the 9th grade center, English 1 and geometry. This model is a Tuesday-Thursday blend, so students are required to be in class Tuesdays and Thursdays, but those face-to-face days are only for assessments. And so while it was a great model for us to study and look at, we really value more the learning experience that would happen between a teacher and students to students, and those learning experiences and the connectedness between teachers and students more than just assessments happening in that face-to-face period. So I will now turn it back over to Dr. Thibodeau.
So Matt took us on this journey to visit these campuses and to kind of explore what this would look like. He also brought to our department a lot of literature around this idea, kind of helping us expand our vision of what this blended model might look like. We were certainly comfortable with the senior high model and what that looked like, but when he first started talking to us about middle school, that was different. You know, that felt really different. And the first question is always, who's going to monitor what students are doing? You know, I mean, that's always the first question. But so we love this question. We love this question in any context. What could this possibly look like? Like, that's our favorite question to work with all of these departments around. And with the blended learning model discussion, what could this possibly look like? We started about a year ago, kind of brainstorming and playing with that. Here's where we kind of are now, knowing that we just have a short time to share our current thinking with you. We love this idea of an opportunity for students to move throughout our secondary courses, maybe even in our elementary courses at some point, but throughout our secondary courses, having this kind of experience, having a blended experience, middle, high school, senior high. We have a lot of support right now around social studies and the possibility there. The barriers that we're told about from other districts typically are around course development. Well, we don't have that barrier because we have deeply developed courses. We have articulated learning goals, articulated assessments, learning experiences. So that was interesting to us because you can really pick up those developed courses, use the same instructional models that we currently use, apply that to blended. Our superintendent will tell you about this story as well, that we attended the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, Student Advisory Committee, that's the title, and we're sharing with them some ideas about dual credit, so a different discussion completely, and just getting feedback from them, and we just thought that would be a nice opportunity for them to nod along and say, yes, the work you're doing is great. But in fact, what they started saying was, they were really lovely right until the point where they realized that their schedules, the current dual credit schedule is several days a week, that our new model might go to every day a week. And they just started saying no, and as much as I tried to talk them into how fabulous that would be, they're like, no, we like it makes us feel like adults. It makes us feel like college to have this varied schedule. So we brought that back, shared it with Matt and his group, and shared it with secondary academics, and started seeing opportunities for the blended model to also impact the dual credit structure. And so that would give kids the best of both worlds. They'd be able to be in a homegrown dual credit course that would be a blended model, allowing them to stay home a couple days a week if they wanted to, or work in the other places in the school. So middle school, high school, senior high model we're looking at. We also have talked a lot about how the authentic skills that we want our students to have, the competencies that we want them to grow, this would be a truly authentic place for those things to grow. Learning how to calendar your responsibilities, to be reflective on your own needs, to kind of recognize intended learning outcomes and where am I in that levels of proficiency, when do I need to go to class to work with my teacher. My teacher's available on Thursdays for writing conferences, do I need one? So that there'd be a lot of real competency building there. And then finally, that we don't want to send our students off to college and say, you had a really safe experience here, now go transfer all of that to a college environment which might be very different. We want to offer them the opportunity to have those varied experiences here in a more supportive environment, like Matt said, where there's trust cards and opportunities to earn your way into some of those varieties. So that's really where we are right now with our thinking. We've developed a timeline. The purpose of it at this point is to create parameters for ourselves so we stay on top of this work, get the right people involved, and move it forward. In some of the areas where we talk about teacher training, that is another place where other districts have told us. We've even had some conversations with ALEAF where they've told us that's difficult work to do the teacher training piece. We have the benefit of Matt's department here, who actually, we have specialists there who are trained in how to train teachers on blended learning models. So we're thinking that we wouldn't limit that piece to just small groups of identified teachers like pilot groups, but we'd really expand that learning to lots of groups of teachers, so this could be scalable over time. So that's kind of where we are in our thinking.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So do these sort of untraditional courses count in the regular GPA?
Yes. These would be actually the same course, same PIMS number, same learning outcomes, same resources as the traditional face-to-face course.
Okay,
so no change there.
So historically, our e-school courses have not been part of the GPA, but these will be. Okay.
Yes.
The other question is, how does the student find out about this? I was troubled to hear the young woman say she had to hear from a friend, and I just went on PISD and searched for blended learning and I got a laundry list of these course types, but no information on how I might pursue that. So how are we getting this word out?
We shared your same response to that. So beginning this year, we moved all of those into our course catalog, so it's open to all students. Met with all of our counselors about meetings with all counselors about the course catalog changes and why we're putting all that information in there. So it is in the new course catalog. So we had a similar response.
And is the course catalog all online?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So that was for coming into the school year or for next year's school year?
That's
the course catalog change.
The new one coming into this school year.
Okay,
But
so
the students, there's that February lag time. So it's in the catalog that came out last February for students scheduling for next school year.
yeah, so I know on the e-school it says 2,900 students last year. Are we seeing an increase this year?
We've seen a gradual increase the last couple years where it's kind of shifted. Normally it's been steady throughout the year where less students are taking supplemental courses throughout the school year and then just hitting it really hard in the summertime. And so we're on track with that number this year as well. Like I said, it's grown steady over the last few years.
So is that 2,900 different students or 2,900 student slots and maybe same student taking multiple
2,900 courses. So
okay.
Student could be taking additional or more than one course, yeah.
Well, my daughter's taking health right now, and it's awesome.
Health.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing. I get updates like 5 assignments have been turned in while she's babysitting, so.
So I have a couple of questions for. First of all, this is a very important initiative, and I'm really happy that we're expanding it. What platforms are we using? Are those platforms that are consistent with what they're going to see in college? Canvas, Blackboard?
Each school uses Blackboard Learn.
Okay, so they're not going to be surprised when they go to college. The second question is, have you thought about getting content that is not created here in PISD? Content from other sources, maybe even universities, colleges. Our ability to deliver just about any topic will probably depend on our importing courses.
Yeah, so when we talk about curriculum design here in the district, what we're talking about are groups of teachers coming together making those decisions that you're saying. So homegrown content, by our definition, is we identify the standards typically given to us through state or sometimes national organizations like AP, College Board, and then finding the resources that support that work. So it's not uncommon at all for us to find resources from universities, outside organizations. An older model of course development would be get the resources first. The state offers you a textbook adoption. Use that textbook adoption and build a course. And we take an absolute backward approach to that. So we build around intended outcomes and then find the right resources, no matter where those might come from.
Okay,
yes.
Very good.
I have a couple of questions. Sorry, my mic is over here. Middle school, I see that you've looked at other schools in the area for an example in Louisville, but they're doing 8th grade U.S. history and then they're doing English 1 and geometry. What are we trying to free up for the kids in middle school? Are they they're not leaving campus, I know that, but what are we freeing up for them? And my other question has to do with the dual credit, and I'm curious how we're partnering with Collin College on that. How do they feel about online, and are they participating in the curriculum there? So those are my two questions.
So on the middle school blend, I don't know that they're freeing up anything in their schedule, so I apologize if that wasn't clear. It's a part of their school schedule. The freedom comes in the ability to have that freedom throughout the day, working different parts throughout the campus, but their schedule, they're not necessarily freeing up any spots in their schedule. They're still taking the required courses that they need. They're just having some control over maybe where they learn, how they learn, and things like that.
So it's almost like New Tech High with the trust cards and all of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And then with Collin, we did speak with them after we spoke to the students and this idea arose, and they're completely on board with that idea of us. So Collin's, and we have a dual credit update coming to you soon, but Collin's primary goal is that we honor the intended learning outcomes. Those are what's absolutely required for them to honor the dual credit, to award our students credit. So the design of the course, when we talked to them about using this sort of blended model, they were in complete support with that. Thank you.
Other comments?
Well, I just want to say that the presentation is very good, and I'd like to praise our technology team and our academic services for combining the power of our teachers with the power of our technology. And so what you're giving, blended learning is giving our students customized learning. So thank you.
So just one last comment, I think, and this is really more for staff than for y'all in particular. We're coming up on our strategic plan, and I think we really need to be mindful of these new types of opportunities as we discuss where we want to go. So very exciting, and thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, moving on now to item 10B, reports on student learning, establishing a community of peer campuses. Senior Executive Director for Assessment, the one and only Dash, will introduce the report on how student assessment data is utilized for instructional enhancements and school improvement.
And you may want to open with a comment to Dr. Thibodeau.
That's funny.
To take a beat and come into the school board now too. So Board Vice President, Trustees, Superintendent. As part of our focus on student learning at the board meetings, I want to share an intention of today is to kind of putting tools in place to how we facilitate school improvement and kind of structure the conversation around peer campuses. We do several things. We provide a lot of tools to kind of motivate the conversation and kind of as a catalyst. So we look at growth, for example. I'm kind of getting ahead of this, but for example, the work that we want to do in peer campuses is, can be defined in multiple ways. Now you're aware of the distinctions that the state does, where they have 40 comparison schools, and they use a lot of variables. They're economically disadvantaged, English language learners, mobility rate, number of special ed students. And in some ways it's really kind of makes it complicated, and sometimes some schools in Plano have a lot of peer campuses, or from Plano, a lot of them have just one or none. Most of our high economically disadvantaged campuses, we don't have any peer campuses from Plano itself. So we wanted to make that process a little bit simpler, and we can benchmark our campuses in multiple ways. We can look at the state average, we can look at the district average, but what we really want to look at is what are the standards that the campuses are meeting within those peer campuses or campuses similar to any one campus. We know that there are great practices and innovation happening in the classrooms. Teachers, it's hard to contain teachers. They find ways to do things well and to innovate. And we want kind of a platform to share those new instructional strategies or new ways they're tackling an old problem. So these are some things that you most probably have seen in some of the presentations we've done. When we look at MAP, all of us have had kids in Plano. We've seen MAP scores going up when they go along in their grade levels. In MAP in growth, for example, this is a campus here. I'm using the same example campus from 5th grade for all my campus examples. This is a real campus here. If you look at what we call quintile 3, so we classify all students into quintile 1 through 5 based on their prior performance district-wide. So in this particular campus, they have 11 students who are performing in the 40th to 60th percentile. And when we measure growth on MAP, we benchmark that growth with the campus growth compared to the district. So in this particular campus, for example, most of the students in that band, those 11 kids, they have above average growth on accelerated growth as well as expected growth. So this kind of starts a conversation about how are these other schools kind of growing kids at different rates from grade to grade level. Then we use kind of the similar approach for STAR. When we look at, for example, in STAR, it gives a natural, based on their different passing standards. They gave students who did pass, who are approaching, who are meets level, who are master's level. I'll kind of get into details of what those standards are. So they have different cut points on the assessment. And this campus has, for example, 29 students who met the passing standard, but didn't meet the meets grade level standard. And we track that 29 students and compare to how the campus did versus how the district did with students that started out at the same level on transitioning from passing to failing and failing to passing, as well as passing to the meet standard, also on measuring on STAR growth. Now, one that we are going to introduce in lot more detail and specificity as a tool is more narrowly focused at the school level. So for example, we are going to group schools based on on percentage economically disadvantaged, and kind of see how our campuses, with that smaller group of peer campuses, how they are performing at the approaches, meets, and masters level. So kind of to get to understand this methodology, and kind of do a little bit of a crash course on STAR standards. So throughout this presentation, I've used grade 5 math as an example. So there are 36 items on the math test. And if the student meets 17 items correct, then the classification for student is approaching grade level standard. Students that get 26 items right are classified as the meets grade level standard, and 31 items right gets to the master's level standard. And the getting 31 out of 36 right on a 36 item test doesn't leave very much room, if you kind of notice it. You know, one or two wrong bubbles, you know, can get you from either side of that. So it's a very high standard, and we have about 100, 200 kids every year that get perfect scores every grade level. So and just to compare, for example, 44% of our students in Plano, district level, are at the master's standard on the 5th grade math test, compared to the district state, which is at the 24. For meets, we are 66 compared to the state, that is 48. And at the approaching standard, it is 88% for Plano versus 81% for the state. Now, I'm going to show some curves here if you want to get down into detail. But I mean, it's in some cases, some campuses look like the state in Plano, and some campuses doesn't look like the state in terms of the demographic. State is 60% economically disadvantaged, 40% English language learners. So what do we get out of comparing ourselves to the state? So we kind of need a better comparison of districts for us to compare ourselves. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here, but I narrowed down this to Collin County schools. And let me explain this, and this will be like the model for the next two graphs. This is all elementary schools with the 5th grade in Collin County, and what we call their passing grades. That is percent meeting the approaching standard on the STAR test. So the green and red dots are all the schools. The red dots are Plano schools. And that line there is kind of a trend line of kind of an average line that goes. The horizontal axis is percentage economically disadvantaged, and you can see there are schools that are 5% economically disadvantaged to 89% economically disadvantaged, and that's kind of we can pick. If you know your school, most probably you can find what the Plano school is. But let's pick that school there that is 86% economically disadvantaged in Plano. If you kind of see around it, there are not many dots around that school for Collin County. If I switch to the state, there are a lot of schools in that range. And then at this particular campus, it is few points above the trend on the approaching grade. If you look at the exact same school and evaluate the performance at the next standard on the STAR test, that's the meets grade level. By the way, this used to be also called college readiness standard. And now you can see that same school there, it is the gap between the trend line and that particular school widened. And then if you evaluate the exact same group of the school, set of schools at the master's grade standard on the STAR, you can see where that school is. Now, this is the nature of different standards. If I kind of switch those three lines, this is, there are schools that 100% passing to about 80-90% passing. If I move to the higher standard, that line goes down, and the master's standard. And that's the nature of looking at this data at different passing standards.
Dash, I found it really interesting, the shape of the curve, where some of the schools that are even more economically disadvantaged are performing better. And I have a hypothesis that it's about resourcing. And often those schools that are highly economically disadvantaged also have more English language learners, which we also resource. So I'd be curious as you work through your work to see if my hypothesis is proved or disproved.
So let's looking at, I will maybe I should, well, I'll answer the question, but most probably, what we are very, I mean, we have a staffing model that kind of takes into account economically disadvantaged students, ELL learners, and the kind of confluence of both, and also the number of students that are into that account. And we really want to concentrate on the work that they do on top of the number of personnel they have to do this work. So when a high bilingual campus or high ESL campus that also has many economically disadvantaged students, how do you start the conversation and the work and guide the best practices? So we really idea is to give tools for them to look at another bilingual campus with similar economically disadvantaged rates and see what those best practices are, and translate that to all schools and definitely for their peer schools. So it's on top of when we say resources, we would like that to be not only personnel, but also the support that we give from central office to guide their work, the training that we do. So that also plays a very large role in here, because I can pick two campuses that is staffed exactly the same rate, but very similar demographics, that most probably one is performing significantly higher than the other. So it's about the quality of the people and the work and the training that we give to the campus too. So it's a lot of work for the campus as well as us to make sure that staffing and the knowledge is all at that same level we want.
I think that's more of a recent innovation, though, to our practice.
So would we be able to, for example, differentiate between, maybe a couple of different challenging subpopulations? So if you took, you looked at your ELL population and you look at your economically disadvantaged, knowing that there may be some crossover, but then distinguish, like see how they compare in peer groups to say, well, wait, my ELL kids are performing above average or above the peer level, but my economically disadvantaged are not, so that we then know perhaps the support we're giving over here on the ELL side is what's working, and we need more support then on more different services on the other. We will have the ability to kind of do that type of analysis, correct?
That's kind of the idea. So, and remember, by the time let's bring ELL into the conversation here. By the time they reach 3rd or 4th grade, and definitely by 5th grade, most of our ELL students have exited the program. But the question now is, how do we monitor, and even after exited the program, how do we support their services in 4th and 5th grade, and moving on also to middle school. So these are all eventually in the end, there's certain level of practices that we can do looking at the school level. But eventually we almost have to get into very small groups of students that start the academic year at kind of the same point. ELL, former ELLs, former bilingual students kind of look at in that very micro level in order to look at some of the interventions at that level that we need to implement.
Where I see real value in this, especially as we're going into budget season and where our budget continues to get tighter and tighter, it's not the answer is not more. The answer is more of what they specifically need. And if we can identify what the part that's working and then the part that maybe needs more support, that's where it's differentiated support as opposed to just support.
Yeah. I mean, for example, we are looking at an example here. This is 5th grade math, and we are kind of still playing around what to call a peer campus. Like in this case, for example, the Foreman Memorial, Meadows, and Mendenhall are all within 5 percentage points economically disadvantaged from this campus. Okay, and it so happens that this is an example is from a bilingual campus, and all these 4 peer campuses are also bilingual. They have bilingual and high ELL population. And the statewide norm for passing is 74.7%. And this campus is exceeding that by 6 percentage points. At the meets grade level, this campus is exceeding it by 12 percentage points. At the master's grade level, this campus is exceeding by 13 percentage points. And you can see the other 4, and the only campuses that are exceeded this campus's performance is Memorial and Mendenhall, and that's at barely by 1 or 2 percentage points at the approaching standard. So, but when it comes to meeting the needs of students that are what we call sure passes, but how they will get them to the next level, then this campus, the gap is at least 8 points from the nearest school. So this campus not only addresses the needs of the struggling learners, but ensures there's growth happening in the middle of the range and also in the top end of the students. So the goal that we want to do is when our campuses meet in June, in like groups, maybe these 5 campuses are meeting together, they can kind of structure the work, and this is kind of a conversation starting point for some of the work they need to do. Now, what we see is most of these comparisons are grade-based, because one of the biggest variables in student learning is the teacher, which accounts for about 25% of student learning. 4th grade, maybe Mendenhall is the campus that everybody wants to see in this group. But in 5th grade, it is this campus that everybody wants to see. So there are variations like that, because that how teacher teams work together is a key part in this discussion. And obviously, these 4 schools want to go and discuss, hey, we all want to do what you guys are doing over here. But then the 4th grade team may have to go to a different campus to kind of learn that process.
Dash, wouldn't that also apply to those quintiles of students? Because I think it's really important. It's just not the campus we're looking at, it's the individual learners. And if you have a child who scores well on math in 1st grade at a Huffman, that child should make the same progress that a child with a similar score at a Skaggs or Andrews should make. We can't lose sight of that as we do this work.
Exactly, yeah. So that's why I wanted to kind of give multiple ways we are looking at it. Those MAP and STAR, we are looking at the individual student level, and we are comparing similar groups of students. In this approach, we are comparing groups of students or campuses that have similar demographics. So these are kind of multiple ways of we are trying to tackle the same problem and get to the root cause of some of these actions. Now in this particular campus, I just want to kind of give a sample. Math and reading shows very similar performance. This particular campus, the teachers teach all subjects, so it's self-contained. So in some cases, we have departmentalized classrooms where we might see differential performance between reading and math, for example. So that's another way we kind of focus our work. Now, that's the work that guides us during for our individual campuses. I just want to share this same approach can be extended at the district level. Just sticking with grade 5 math, this is the whole state. Every dot is a district. Every district in state is there. And that red dot is Plano, and it may be just pure coincidence, but it's right on the trend for similar campuses. So that, I believe that number is 88.5 is the state average for similar campuses that is around us, with the 29% economically disadvantaged, and our performance is right on the trend line. And when you look at the next passing standard, that's the meets passing standard, we developed a significant gap, and at the master's standard, that gap widened. So at the district level, looking at math again, if you narrow down districts that have at least 1,000 kids at each grade level, we have about close to 4,000 kids at grade level. And then look at schools within about 6 percentage points economically disadvantaged. So that's the list. The list is sorted by like 24.1% economically disadvantaged to 33.5% economically disadvantaged. That's Rockwall to Humboldt ISD. And if you notice, at the approaches grade level, I think there are 12 or 13 schools here. Plano is right in the middle, and at the meets grade level and the master's grade level, hardly anybody has met the standard with a 9 and a 15% gap. So this also kind of tells us, kind of informs us where we need to focus some of our work. We do want to maybe see Rockwall, Wiley ISD is the only district, and PLN is the one that exceeded in 2 out of 3 compared to Plano, and that's not by much, 1 or 2 percentage points. So, it's always construction mode, so I use this theme here because over the last 3 weeks, we used some of these tools to train all the campus administrators on how to use these in their school improvement planning, and how to have the conversation. What are the conversation starters? How do you identify your problem statements and to kind of drill down deep, how to do root cause analysis, to identify what we see. These are outcomes. These are almost symptoms of our, or the outcomes of our program. But the underlying, nobody goes in to say that we're going to increase the passing rate on STAR by 10% this year. That's an outcome. What we need to understand is what are the things, actions we need, and the programs and trainings and resources that we have to have in place to make that outcome happen. So how does a campus in the improvement planning process get to that level of detail? So we trained all our campus administrators, all the principals and APs in that process the last 3 weeks, and we will be continuing with that effort in June when we get the STAR results back. So it's always in construction mode, but hopefully these tools will be starters for the conversation to our next efforts next year.
Dash, is there any way that we measure parent involvement in a student's achievement?
Well, I don't know, maybe that's that's traditionally it's a very, if you read parent involvement, a lot of the research says how hard it is to measure, and then they find very little data points, and they may jump into very strong conclusions. And because it is obviously there's a direct correlation between economic need of the student and economic level and the education level of the parents. So we know they are highly correlated, but it's almost, if we know let's flip that question. So our work is, we know some information, the level of parental involvement in some schools may be higher than the other, or some parents higher than other parents. But our work is knowing that fact, how we put programs in place to mitigate that lack of that need or the excess of that need. So we know where we have less parental involvement. We know campuses that have lower PTA attendance than the other campuses. But how do we overcome those challenges should be our way to tackle it. Okay. So basically, in spite of parental involvement, we get good results.
Right.
Dash, can you go back? I'm sorry.
I was just saying I couldn't agree more. Whether parents can't or won't, I don't care the verb. We need to help the kids.
Dash, can you go back to the slide that has the graph, the scatter plot, Collin County Schools approaches grade level. A few more back, 2 more. This one. Okay. When you look at the 64% line, for example, this is something that I will always go back to. When you look at the 64% line, you can see two schools there that have more than 10% difference. They're both PISD schools, they're both on the 64% line, but there's more than 10% difference in approaches. If you go to the next slide, I'm guessing those are the same schools, they're still at the 64. I see almost 20% difference between those two schools. And if you go to the next slide in masters, again, 64, I'm guessing those are exactly the same two schools. We have about 12, 13, maybe 14% difference. I know that Tammy said that this is probably resources, but I don't know what it is. I think the biggest thing we can find out is why are two schools, if we use the percentage of economically disadvantaged as on the x-axis, what is it that they're doing, that one of these schools is doing, that gets you 12, 15, 20% better performance in different levels?
That's, you just defined what a problem statement that a school, those two schools would determine from this data. So their task would be now look at a couple of schools around them, and I would definitely go meet the school that is 15 points higher there.
Right.
Because there's a school right on top that is exceeding at every standard, and see what the workaround is and how they use their resources. What level of training have they done with the teachers, with the specialists, and how the principals and the APs are involved in monitoring the training. So that's the conversation starter that we exactly want to have. So when we put those 5 schools together, that's the work.
I see this as another real powerful tool in being able to analyze not just the resources, but what are you spending your resources on? And because here's a peer group of schools that are all very similar in makeup, and yet there's an outlier. So let's go find out what the outlier's doing and see if that can be replicated, or if that replication is appropriate. So the question I have is, this graph is Collin County schools, and then later on we saw the graph of Texas districts. Can we drill as far down as every school in the state? For example, instead of just doing all Collin County schools, do all Texas schools, and then figure out where the real outliers are within the state, and say, there's a elementary school in McAllen that's doing amazing things in 4th grade, 5th grade math, so much so that they are far and away an outlier. Let's find out what they're doing. Can we do that?
That's we're kind of starting small because it's always easy to work with schools that are driving distance from your school, but that's something. So there are a few schools where maybe right peer campuses may be outside Collin County. Remember, when it's Collin County, that means we don't have Louisville schools, we don't have Richardson, we don't have Coppell, we don't, I mean, that's something which we must probably expand based on the need for specific schools. We have a lot of peer schools for our camp to the left of this graph, but we don't have a lot of peer schools on the other. In fact, if you see most of the proportion of schools with high economically disadvantaged, there are a lot of red dots compared to the green dots. They're kind of half-half. But when you go to the left, most of the other Collin County schools don't have that many economically disadvantaged students in their campuses.
That's where you need more data. You put in a larger peer group and find those outliers. But yeah, I mean, certainly we need to understand where we're being successful in PISD first within a peer group, and see if that is something that can be imported to another campus. But certainly, let's think big, and let's go find out where the best successes are, and find out what they're doing.
And that's why on the district, obviously, we may want to look at Pearland and Wiley. Wiley is close by, because in order to get, so we are looking at 5th grade math, right? So it's the same. So there are obviously things that are happening in Wiley that most probably they're targeting certain group of students that for higher outcome.
I don't want to move away from the resource issue. I'm all about best practices, but we've had some schools that we have been systemically prejudiced against because the kids already speak English in those schools. And so the kids already speak English in those schools. And we almost have a hierarchy where part of it is required by federal formula, part of it's how we crafted the formulae, where if you're learning English, you get resources. If you already speak English, even though you're poor and your school's got a lot of issues, you don't. And so I really want, as we're looking at our resources, I want to know the total number of adults in the building, and let's make sure we compare very carefully in that regard. When I first joined the board in 2010, we did get that type of output. We saw the number of teachers, the number of instructional specialists in every single school, and then we can really make a comparison because we have under-resourced a number of bodies, some of these schools. I'm reminded of a waiver that we had to vote on because one of our high-performing, almost no poverty schools had one child over in 4th or 5th grade, and so they were going to get a teacher $20,000 to take care of basically one child. When you started looking at other campuses in terms of their ESL, they also have 10-to-1 teacher ratios in some of those classrooms. So there's some incredible resources, advantages to having English language learners on your campus. And we need to really decompose that and look at how many teaching adults are in a classroom and what is the true delta. When you look and say, oh, these schools, struggling schools are going to get instructional specialists, every single one of our elementary schools gets that. That's not a point of differentiation. So we need to be really, really crisp at looking at how many bodies are in the school. There was one of the presentations I attended this weekend that made that point. You know, how many adults are in that school taking care of kids?
I just want to make sure that this is not the only thing that we're looking at, because it's not all about the resource. It's not all about the numbers. It's quality. It's other things that are softer. I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of other things.
But we've never looked at the resources and the equity.
We should.
And so let's please look at that point, because we don't have to go to McAllen to do that. We can just look at our own school buildings and see how many people are there.
But where I see this tool as supplementing what you're talking about is being able to analyze the resources. Where are we specifically using those resources? Where are we having success with fewer resources so that we can take that widget and put it over here where we're having less success with a different resource, or move that widget to a different school and bring a widget from another school to this one, so that, because at this point, you know, it's not, while it's not just about resources and how many we have, it's how we use them, because we have a limited number of resources.
Right, but some of these schools that have not been resourced, they've never been resourced, and so you find the ones that are more successful, it's because they do have more bodies in the building. And so I've long been a proponent. It's not that we didn't have quality teachers or teachers who cared about kids and their ability to learn and didn't think the kids could learn. All those boxes were already checked off. And so if you've already checked off all those boxes, then it gets to how many caring teaching adults are in the building. I'm more than happy to do the fancy exploration, but I want to know before we conclude our budget cycle, how many grown-ups are in those buildings taking care of kids?
You know, yes, but that cannot be the only thing, and I don't agree with all the boxes are checked, because, you know, we have our own kids in school, and you know that there are two teachers in the same school teaching the same thing. One of them, the kids are just getting better grades and they learn more. It's not all about just the numbers. I don't want us to forget that there are things beyond that.
I'm happy, but I think a foundation is how many folks are actually there in the building helping, because we have not done that.
So, okay, so let's, I mean, that request is on the table. Staff has noted that, so we'll be able to, as we go through the cycle, the budget cycle, that information hopefully we will get relatively quickly, and can do that analysis, but it's part of it.
You know, it's just like when you try to extract a formula from this, right? So you start with a formula, y equals x. Well, that doesn't look exactly like that, so there must be something else. And until we get to that point where we know what that formula is, that's where we need to be. We know what the formula is, and its resources, its quality, its softer things like autonomy. Those are the type of things we need to measure, not only the resources. We do need to measure resources, but not only.
All right, so so they'll bring resources, we'll discuss other things. Any other comments for Dash before we turn him loose on the world? All right, thank you, Dash.
Thank you.
We are now moving on to policies. At most of our regular meetings, we have policies on the agenda for the board's consideration. These policies have undergone prior review by the district's attorney and by each board member. I invite Carla Oliver to introduce the policies we have on the agenda this evening. Ms. Oliver.
Thank you. First, we have EIC Local Academic Achievement. It is presented for adoption under second reading. This policy has been revised to align with current district practice.
Do I have a motion to adopt on second reading?
I move to adopt policy EIC local under second reading.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Carla?
Okay, next we have TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 110 affecting local policies. It's presented for approval under first reading this evening and will be presented for adoption under a second reading at a subsequent meeting. And if you remember, this motion's kind of long,
Yeah.
so we need all the language.
This one has a very specific motion. Is there a motion?
I move that the board add, revise, or delete local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 110 with revisions as noted to policy BBB Local Board Members Elections.
Well done.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on any of this riveting stuff? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
Adding the
Thank
words
you
at
all.
large was important.
All right, well, that concludes the policy section. I now convene the 15-minute public comment session on non-agenda topics. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes. Ms. Oliver, we had 4, I believe?
That's correct.
Okay.
With your permission, we'll begin with Walter Bernard.
So while Mr. Bernard is making his way up, I'll just, in terms of a reminder on the ground rules, so you have 3 minutes. Ms. Humphrey, the board secretary, will keep time. She'll give you a hoot or something when you have 1 minute left. And we cannot respond. So you are free to begin when you're ready.
I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left. Don't let that stop you, because you'll have 1 minute after I give you that notice. You can continue speaking for 1 minute after that.
All right, can you hear me okay?
You might
Can you
move the
speak a
mic
little-
closer.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to bring this to school council. I appreciate that very much. I must say, while raising my daughter, I would be standing in front of a school board. I'm not a public speaker, and please accept my pauses and modifications to my original message, because I thought it was a free form, so that's okay. I got it covered on that. Today I'm asking for direction, relief, and appropriate discipline for the young adults that continue to alienate, harass, and upset my daughter. My name is Walter Barnard, and my daughter is being bullied and cyberbullied at Clark High School. I'm asking for immediate attention to the situation from Clark High School and Plano Independent School District, because administration at this point has been handled poorly at best. Originally, I was going to run through some of the more important points of what I was going to present to the school board today. But this investigation that's being conducted by the Clark High School administration has to be completed. While my daughter has dealt with issues from the beginning of the school year, it has intensified much more around the date of February 8th. Today is April 10th. We had a meeting between attorneys, administration, and my daughter and myself and my wife, where there was a time frame set with respect to the investigation that was to be conducted on their end.
1 minute.
And today we still do not have any direction or any information with respect to my daughter, who is being left feeling as if she's left alone at school. Since she had been dealing with bullying issues since the beginning of the year, we had to convince her that PISD would take care of her with respect to the problems she's dealing with. That has not happened at all, because she has feared retaliation, she has feared alienation, which she is experiencing every single day of her existence at Clark High School. I invite the council to please take a closer look at the information I can provide. My wife and I have prepared so many issues that have come up with respect to my daughter and how things are not being handled in any capacity. The children that are involved in this situation are making a mockery of the administration.
Finish your
You
thought,
can
please.
finish your talking point, but the time is up.
I'm looking for direction, and as like I said, I'm not sure what the next step is. It's because we've tried diligently, we've hired attorneys we cannot afford, and nothing, absolutely nothing is being done with respect to my daughter feeling safe and being able to get an education at Clark High School.
Thank you. Ms. Oliver, our second speaker.
Heather Wang.
Members, it's a very pleasure. It's a great. Can you hear me?
Yes, I was just going to let you know that when you get to where you have 1 minute left, I'm going to tell you 1 minute. Okay.
Great. I'm here to talk about the GPA ranking. I am against the proposal made by the advisory committee about only ranking the top 10 students, top 10 of our students. I have been taught to make smart goals all my life. Goals have to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. That's how I teach my kids as well. She is in 9th grade. First time she got her ranking. It's heartbreaking, and it's a rude awakening. And she and I were very upset about the status, the ranking. But when we sat down, we looked at that. I told her, sweetie, it's time for you to stop burying your head in the sand and start working. So what happened next is amazing. She streamlined her routine. She did better time management, spent less time in the mall, less time on Netflix. She started working hard, and with every improvement, I see the joy in her eyes. Mama, after this exam, my GPA will go up this much, and my ranking will be closer to 25%. So, from my experience, I want to say, trust our kids. They can handle it. They can handle the pressure. And there are problems. I'm aware of it, and I'm sure we all know the system is not perfect. There is a negative impact on course selection. There's unbelievable stress on students, but I believe we can trust our students to be strong. Also, if we decide not to rank all students, I would still strongly suggest we have a top 25% ranking. First of all, a lot of state colleges have automatic admission. For example, Texas A&M. This is a great benefit for our top performing students. Not only important is the top automatic admission, and also top colleges like historical black colleges and regional colleges heavily consider the top 25 class ranking in high school. as long as colleges still look at top 25% class ranking in high school, we should not deprive our students of this benefit. Otherwise, we do our top performing 25%, top 25% students injustice. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Oliver?
Mrs. Zhang?
Good evening. Today I have just one main point about the GPA change proposal that has been put out. They have been proposing to have two GPA. One is called cumulative, the other is called ranking GPA, which is only based on core courses. Today my main point is that we are introducing unnecessary complication and confusion, and this change, the two GPA system, is not bringing up improvement. At the information session that advisory board provided, the consultant, which is a professor at UNT, gave a very interesting and insightful example. He gave us GPAs of five students and asked the audience to decide which student we would like to admit. It was very clear, right? We have the GPA ranking, we have the AP classes, and so forth. And then he dropped out the rankings of those students, which is very inconsistent with what the GPA information would have told us. And the audience all became very puzzled, hesitant, and confused. Why? Because the two metrics provided by the school or by the professor in the case were inconsistent with each other. And now we are proposing two GPA systems that are actually very likely to provide inconsistent signals about the profiles of our students. I think we are actually doing something we do not want to do. That's exactly why we want to take away the ranking system. But now we're introducing more metrics, and they are likely to be inconsistent. How would the college admission officers interpret such inconsistency? Would they have the time and patience to actually find out what's driving the differences? How would our students consider about the two systems, right? Should I try to maximize my cumulative GPA, or should I try to maximize my ranking GPA? How should I make decisions in my course selection process?
1 minute.
I am a professor at UT Dallas, and I have taught at different universities. And trust me, honestly, I think even just one cumulative GPA is complicated enough. Adding another is really unnecessary. And this is against the simplicity principle that the consultant, the UNT professor, provides. A good GPA system should be simple, should be easy to understand. However, I think the two systems we are proposing, they are not easy to understand, they are not easy to implement, and they are not easy to interpret. And my second point, which is my concluding point, is that given the topics that we have discussed and as my understanding, the current proposal, I don't think it's ready to be adopted just as is. We're not there yet. We're not ready for a change. This change will affect generations of students in Plano. And I trust the trustee, the committee totally understand that we cannot take this decision lightly. And I think we need more time, more analysis, and more data points to consider this. Thank you for your attention.
I apologize if I mispronounced this name. Cynthia Shi.
Respected Board of Trustees and Superintendent, thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak here. My name is Cynthia Shi, and I would like to comment on the new GPA ranking proposal that was presented by PISD staff at 3 information sessions just a couple weeks ago. And just as a background information, I would like to recap the new PISD proposal. So PISD is going to implement 2 GPA systems. One is similar to what we currently have, and it's going to be called the cumulative GPA. Which accounts for all courses taken. Cumulative GPA will show up on every student's transcript. There will also be a second GPA called ranking GPA. Ranking GPA will only take into account the required core courses and will not be on transcript. Ranking GPA will be class ranking will be based on ranking GPA and will first become available to students who rank in the top 10% in February of their 11th grade year. In addition, PISD would implement a Latin system, but based on cumulative GPA. PISD would also publish 10% cutoff based on ranking GPA. I don't know if you board of trustees, any of you are confused or you're clear with what this is all about, but it took me a couple of days to just understand this. So, as much as I appreciate PISD's continued efforts to address GPA ranking issue, and I would call this new PISD proposal a step forward compared with the 2017 proposal, I still have many concerns I want to share with the board. First of all, the 2 GPA system is just confusing to understand. And it's for parents, for students, for college admission officers. How parents and students can manage, comprehend, and the impact of course selections on 2 GPAs, and how do they make educational decisions. And secondly, in 2017, I believe this board, for the lack of a better word, reached the consensus to address the CBE.
1 minute.
The CBE and course weights issue before addressing GPA. I think that's the right path to take, and I'm very disappointed as we address, the GPA, change the GPA without, having an approved and, reasonable action plan on CBE and the class weights. And third, the proposed GPA ranking will not make ranking available till the spring semester junior year. This is too late for some camps, scholarship, and even TAMS admission. My daughter, she applied for Kool-Aid scholarships in her junior year. So that requires a GPA, and TAMS admission requires a GPA ranking. So for, these are for sophomores, the TAMS admission. So just ranking available in the, the February of the junior year, that's just too late. To report GPA ranking at its current schedule would only add, small inconvenience to PISD, but it will well assist our students in their camp scholarship applications.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With no further business, this meeting of the Board of Trustees is adjourned at 9:03.